Am I on?
Yep.
You're on, yep.
Okay. Well, my parents were born in eastern Iowa. Uh, and let's see, my grandparents, they started farming in eastern Iowa. And after a few years of farming, they moved to a farm in western Iowa. They bought a quarter of land there, and they didn't have any buildings, so my grandfather built a 16-foot square frame covered it with tar paper, and that's where they lived
Wow.
for 2 years.
Cool.
Anyway, my grandmother got so homesick that they had to quit and go back to Iowa, eastern Iowa again. So they stayed there and farmed there, and my father was born there. And I think when he was about 20 years old, something like that, he was born in 1881. And they decided to move up to South Dakota. So my grandfather bought 3/4 of land there at Lake Preston, and they had cattle. He had bought some purebred cattle while he was still in Iowa, and they brought all their cattle and their horses and their chickens and everything when they moved up there. They called it an immigrant train, and there was several families there, carloads of the things that they were bringing up from Iowa. And so they were farming the 3/4 of land there, but they had hired help too. But anyway, my grandfather became ill with cancer, and so he died in about 2 years after they moved up there. So that left the farm to my grandmother and my father. And also my father's sister, Cassie, and her husband and little boy moved up there too. So they lived together in the house on the farm there. And then they were farming, and my grandmother said in 1911 they had a crop failure, and just like they had here in this year in the hot, dry weather, and they had nothing, no crops. So the next year, however, they had a bumper crop. In 1912, they really had a good crop. And so but in the meantime, my grandfather on the other side of the house, Dr. J.H. Darling, had moved into Lake Preston and became the dentist there. Well, he had a daughter named Geneva. Well, she was in high school, and my father was kind of looking around at the young girls, and so she was 10 years younger than he was, but he eventually got her to marry him. So, but he was a gentleman, the old doctor. So my father had to propose to him, ask him for her hand in marriage. So I guess it was agreeable, so they got married. So that was 1912, I think, and I think that's right. So anyway, they were doing well farming there, and the cattle were increasing, and so my father had a neighbor named Warner, and he had cattle too. And so they agreed to have a cattle sale. So they made up a booklet of cattle pictures and pedigrees and everything, and had a sale in 1917. And it did real well, and so he made enough money on that to have a new house built in 1917. And also bought a new car and took a vacation to the Black Hills. So I was about 2 years old, and I can't remember anything about the trip to the Black Hills, but I do remember going down the wooden cave. The air come rushing up, and I saw some little white things look like popcorn. That's all about I can remember going down in there in Wen Cave. But,
Now, what kind of car did they buy? Do you remember what kind of car they bought? Do you remember what kind of car they bought?
What kind of car did they buy? What kind of model was the car?
oh, it was a 1917 Buick Touring.
Okay.
It was a, I don't know whether it was a 4 or 6 cylinder or something like that.
Yeah.
But it had side curtains, you know, and it had a top that would fold up and then put side curtains on. So,
Okay.
but it was a nice car at that time.
Yeah.
So, you don't remember anything about that car?
No,
That
I
was-
don't, not that.
Well, anyway, and let's see, I was trying to think what next there. Oh, you mentioned you wanted to talk about Gunder Sorstead.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Anyway, when we were born, they didn't have a hospital or anything like that. When babies were born, they were born at home.
Yeah.
And anyway, there was a lady in town, the wife of a jeweler, and she would go out to the farms and to help with the newborn baby and the mother. And it usually took about 9 days at that time before the mother would be able to get up and take care of herself. One woman, they said, would get up at 7th the 7th day, and they thought that was bad business. That was dangerous.
Yep,
It's different nowadays.
yep.
But anyway, the jeweler, his name was Gunder Sorstead, and he had come over from Norway and worked in the Elgin watch factory in Illinois when he first came over. And but he was an experienced jeweler and had worked at the business in Norway. So they put him on a tray line to work on a tray line, putting parts and stuff together on it. And he told his supervisor there one day, he said, I can do better than this. He said, okay, well, so here, he gave him a tray. He said, these are the parts of a watch. He said, see if you can put it together. So he came back after a while to see how he'd get along with it, and he had it on the tray running.
Wow.
So he told his supervisor that he could do better than that, and so he didn't work there anymore.
Yeah.
He quit.
Yeah.
But old Gunder had that little store for years, many years, and he was always very reasonable. His work he did, he would charge to clean and a watch, you know. Well, the farmers all had big heavy watches, you know, in their bib overalls. And he would clean it and have it for $1. Clean it all up, have it running. My father went in one day there to buy, he needed a new watch, a big old heavy watch there. So Gunder looked at him and he said, well, you're a hard-working man. He said, you can have it for $1. It was probably a Waltham, well-made watch. But the farmers always carried us bib overalls and had a heavy watch in their bib. But Gunder later on, Gunter he bought a nice house, the best house in town. And
Looks a lot like the farmhouse.
anyway, as time progressed there, well, I'll tell you more about that later, about that house. But let's see. Lois and I were about 5 or 7 years old. One morning, we were sleeping upstairs, and my father came up and woke us up, and early in the morning, and said, "I have a surprise downstairs for you." So we got up and hurried down the stairs there, and in the bedroom, mother was in bed, and over in the corner of the room there, on the old sewing machine, was a wicker basket, brand new wicker basket, and a newborn baby there. She says, "That's your new sister." We were dumbfounded. We didn't know there was going to be a baby or anything like that. I had no idea about that. We thought that we were going to be the family, my sister and I.
Oh, sure.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Well, anyway, that was our new little sister, Aisley. So, let's see. During the winters, we had some hard blizzards lots of times, of course, and ordinarily we would walk to school, Lois and I, after we were in school, grade school. But if it was really stormy, Dad would hook up a team and have we had a bobsled there, runners. He'd take us to school. We had a buffalo robe and cover us up. Well, let's see. My father always had a hired man in through the summer months. He would start at about the first of March usually, and the wages were $30 a month plus board and room, and he'd have a place in one of the bedrooms, and he'd help with the farm work, and we farmed with horses, of course. We always had 12 horses, at least 12, because it took 6 on the gang plow, and then we'd have an extra team then for other kind of work. But and people used to raise their own horses, and so they were kind of a family. The horses were one old mare named Flory. Her name was Flory. Anyway, she had a couple of colts, and then they grew up and had colts too. So after a while, they were practically all related. But the best and most best looking horse of all the geldings there was Jack, and he was like a stallion. He was big and powerful, and he was the leader of the clan. He knew a horse come on there, why he let him know that he was in charge. He had a big neck on him, and a beautiful horse. And when he was hooked up on him, he wanted to lead he wanted to put all alone. Old Jack. But they had another horse. There was a sorrel, and they called him Jim. So we had Jack and Jim. They made a big team. They weighed about 1,800 pounds. They were big.
Wow.
And Jack was always nervous and high-strung. And he'd go in the barn there, and suddenly when he stepped inside, it startled him. He'd jump and snort. Had we ever heard of a horse blow? He would just make a blow or blow the barn down. But anyway, sometimes my father would take him to town and to get him shod with horseshoes
Wow.
if it was icy and snowy. And he didn't like to go to town. It made him nervous. The noise is different. And so once my father had to have a new hay rack built, so he got a carpenter to build a hay rack right in the lumber yard. Then he went and got with the team and to bring it home, and hooked onto the hay rack, and then he went in to pay and left the horses standing out in the driveway, and it was a big lumber yard, and somebody dropped a plank and it sounded like a shotgun. And then Jack, he couldn't stand that. It made him so nervous, he just took off and went right on down through the lumber yard and out the back end and down an alley, and he could run a little faster than Jim. So the wagon kind of reared off to the side and hit a telephone pole, and it sheared off the telephone pole, but the new rack was just all scored up. So anyway, he didn't like to go to town anymore. But somebody caught the horses. They had broken their tubs and were going, but they had caught the team.
Wow.
Yeah, they'd have runaways once in a while.
I'll bet,
Now, do you remember when Grandma was born? Do you remember that at all? When Grandma was
My
born?
grandfather,
No,
Me,
Maryland.
me.
when you were born?
I'm grandma.
To him, yeah.
I remember.
Yeah.
Do you remember when I
Yeah,
was
you were born in 1927, isn't that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, Marilyn was quite a favorite, and she got a little older. She was always, any trouble or anything in the house, she was always kind of leveling things out, you know. Keeping the arguments down a little bit. And she was always kind of a favorite. I don't, when she was about probably 5 years old, my father would like, in the evenings, he'd like to get a rocking chair right under the chandeliers there and get a newspaper and read. And only he'd have time to read then, and the day's work was done. And Marilyn would always go and get a comb and some brush and brush his hair, you know, and take good care of him.
Yeah.
And but then she had a little
Well,
thing that she would like to have him do then, if she would do that to him, you know. So she had a book of pictures of a rag doll, and the rag doll's name was Beloved Belinda.
I
And
remember
it
that.
had pictures of Belinda, and then it had something underneath there writing, you know, about Belinda.
Yeah.
So she would like to have him read that to her.
Uh-huh.
And she had it read so many times, she had it all memorized. So if it happened to make a mistake, you know, on the reading there, she had it, right now, she had it corrected.
I know that book, yeah, Beloved Belinda.
Anyway, then, lo and behold, a little later, another girl came along,
Yeah, that's
You were getting outnumbered by then.
Grace. Yeah. And she was a different temperament. She wasn't as smooth as Marilyn.
yeah, yeah, she was a feisty
But
one,
she
yeah.
she turned out all right. Well, talking back to farming there, my father would hire a man to start farming or start working about the 1st of March. That's when they were getting ready for the new field work. And he had an old man, he had been a farmer named Harvey Pitcock, and he had worked for my father several years through the summer. And one year then, 1926, he was looking for a hired man, and Milton Peterson, I don't know whether you remember
Yes,
him.
I do.
Milton?
Yes, yeah.
Anyway, he came looking for a job, and he had a, he had been raised down around Oldham. And he was an excellent worker, very good. And so he, in a few years, well, he had accumulated enough, so he bought his own farm, got married.
Was he Henry's cousin? Was he related to Henry?
Yeah, he was Henry's cousin.
Yeah, that's what I thought, yeah.
Time went on, why, Milton told my father that he had a cousin coming over from Denmark. It would be, but he had been up in North Dakota working for an uncle for about 4 years, and that he would like to have him come down and work there on the farm. So he did. Henry came down and went to work there. I think he worked about 3 years there. So,
Oh, how old was Lois then? How old was Lois when Henry worked there?
well, yeah, she was home there part of the time. Part of the time she was working in Iowa. But anyway, they became kind of interested in each other, and so they got married.
Yeah.
But
So Everett, what was your first job besides working on the farm? You remember what your first job was?
first job I had,
Yeah.
well, one day Milton was, he wanted to take a day off, the hired man, and Dad said, if you can get somebody to take your place, he said, we gotta have that work going, we're cultivating corn. So, I was 11 years old, I guess. So he said, well, if you can run the cultivator, why, well, you take the job. So I did. That was my first dollar. Because that's what he was making $1 a day.
Wow.
So I made $1 that day. I remember Milton said, well, here's your $1.
Wow. You still have that one?
No, I have one, but not that one.
So Grandma, what about you? What was your first job? Do you remember what you first made money at?
Yeah, when I was in junior in high school, I started working at the telephone office at night.
Okay.
Yeah, so I worked with Blanche Freewathan. She's my best friend there.
Okay.
And she taught me the ropes. And so I would work after school in the evenings. They had a place up there, a cot, so I could stay overnight there.
Ah.
And in those days, the telephone were the kind that the little things dropped down when you had to pick up the little thing about that long and plug it in, you know. And when you lay down at night, then you could turn it on, so if one of those dropped down, it'd ring a loud bell. So you'd get up and go out and answer it. And the first day I worked at noon on a Saturday, they told me how to run the fire whistle in case somebody called in with a fire. But it was just like a wall switch. You just turn it up, turn it down. So I had forgotten about it, and it was about 1 minute after 12 when the phone rang, and Blanche said, "Ring the bell." I thought, oh my gosh, my first day of job, and I missed it. But I turned it on. But then the first fire that was called in, that was exciting because everybody called in to the phone company to see where the fire was. So I had dozens of phone calls, and that was interesting. I didn't realize that's how they got the news where the fire was, because nobody, telephone was the only way. So that was it. First job I had, making money.
So Everett, what was the first car you ever owned? Remember the
Me?
first? Yeah.
I bought a 1930, I think 1932 V8 Ford Coupe. I paid $75 for it. It was a wreck. Anyway, the radiator leaked so bad that the owner, the lady owned it there, she said, "Do you think you could get rid of that thing for me?" She said, "Well, I asked how much do you want for it?" Well, she said, "I'd like to have $75, so I paid her. And I took the radiator out of it and took it down to a radiator shop and got it fixed for $2.
Oh,
And it had a speedometer dial on it, a little needle that would go from 0 up to 80. Well, I could make it go up to 80 and stay there.
oh.
But it was a powerful little thing, a little V8, one of the first V8s they made,
Oh.
Ford. And I had a lot of fun with it. I could go up those hills there in Seattle pretty fast.
So,
Oh, so that's where you owned it? You bought it in Seattle?
Hmm?
Is that where you bought it, in Seattle?
Seattle's where you bought it? So you got it in Seattle?
Oh, yeah, that's when I lived in Seattle.
Yeah.
I went out there in 1939. I went out to Seattle, and I was working in the garage washing cars and parking cars. They had a building, something like this, with a garage beside it for the people that had the cars.
Yeah.
And I happened to then get a job chauffeuring as a side job for an old judge
Oh,
who
yeah.
lived in the building, and he and his wife, and he was a well-respected old judge there in town. And anyway, they had a big Packard car that for me to drive, and I'd pick them up at the door and take them downtown to shop. She had a helper lady, Mrs. Gilman, because she had been on a cruise down in the South Pacific and had got a little bit intoxicated, I guess, and had fallen and hurt her hip, so she couldn't walk very good. But so she had a Mrs. Patterson for a helper, and she would always be with Mrs. Gilman.
So do you remember the judge's name?
Not his name, just Judge Gilman, they called him.
Judge Gilman,
Yeah, that was his name.
yeah.
He was well known around town because one day I was taking him somewhere, and he said, he said, I might be able, would you like to get a different kind of a job? And I said, yeah, I'd like to go to work for Boeing. They were building putting up their factory, and but they didn't have it done. I said, I'd like to go to work for them. Well, so he didn't say anything. He said, I do know some of the guys on the board there. And so he didn't say anything more for about a week. He says, have you heard from Boeing's? I said, no, I hadn't heard from him. He didn't say anything, but a couple of days I had an invitation to go down there and apply for work. So I did, and they went to be interviewed. And they said, well, we're not hiring at all. We just don't have any place to put people yet. So, but he says there's gonna be thousands of work when we get going, building our airplanes, because they had contracts for building flying fortresses.
Yeah.
And he said there will be lots of work later. But he sighed and he says, there seems to be a lot of pressure on this application, so we're going to put you on anyway.
Oh, really?
So I went to work then for Boeing.
Oh.
But they were getting equipment in to stock the new shops. They were getting post drills and all kinds of stuff, and metal benches, for work people, with drawers and everything. Just stacks of those things. And I was working out of the room where they would bring them in, and then take them out and put them out into the building, where it was about 50 acres of building there.
Yeah.
So we had a lot of stuff. So he would say, well, when you get the stuff all hauled out of here, why, he says, just come by once in a while and look in and see if there's anything going on. Every couple of us got walking, just keep walking. So every couple hours or so we'd come back and walk by again, see if they got any new material in to help for us to work with. So anyway, I worked at that, I guess, for 6 months or so, and they were gradually accumulating more room for a factory building, more rooms added. And so they gave me a job working in one of the supply rooms. They were getting things organized a little better. Some of the shops were working, and they would call in for requests for some material or something once in a while. And I answered the phone for the calls. And when they'd say, well, we need a carpenter over here, we need a welder, we need a mechanic, we need in our tool room, we need a machinist. And I would post the thing on a bulletin board outside there. And when a guy get his job done, when he'd come back and look for another job. So we'd see that on the bulletin board there, and so then he'd go out and find out what they wanted in the shop there. Maybe a plumbers would need a union or a nipple or something like that. Well, I didn't know anything about those words. So they would come and say, well, I need that 6-inch nipple, or a 2-inch coupling, or a union. And I would, I didn't know. So they would come back in the storeroom there where I was working. It's all brand new shelves and everything. Come back in there and go in there and they'd say, this is what I want. So he'd sign it out.
Yeah. That way you kind of learned what everything was that way, huh?
Yeah, then
Yeah.
he'd be on his way to get his job done.
So what was it like having Everett leave the farm?
Oh, it was sad, yeah. It went first time, second time?
When
Oh,
you
well-
went to Seattle.
Yeah, when was the first time you left?
Oh, yeah, to Seattle. How old was I? I can't remember. I was in probably the 6th grade.
Mm.
And yeah, we missed him. Yeah,
Yeah.
because he was always there and always really nice to be around, and he was always good to us kids and helped us, and so we really missed him. And I remember the first time he ever came home to visit.
Mhm.
Remember, it was in wintertime, I believe. That night he came home with somebody to give him a ride.
Okay.
And I remember Mother woke us up, so we ran downstairs in our nightgowns, and he was standing there with his overcoat on, and he said, I've got something for you. So he gave Grace a package and gave me a package, and in it was each a beautiful sweater. You remember that? He brought us a beautiful sweater when you came back from Seattle the first time. And we wore those sweaters for years and years.
Was that right?
And mine was a raspberry color, and I even had it after I got married.
Oh, wow.
It was neat. It was great.
So how long did he stay that
I
time
don't
he came
remember.
back? Okay.
No, it was just an exciting time.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were happy to have him there, and it was exciting, and then it went back to normal. Yeah, without it.
Mhm.
But yeah, we missed him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Everett, speaking of Seattle, I found you on the census, the 1940 census. So I don't know if you'll remember those names, but that's who you were living with in 1940. Do you recognize any of those names there? The Nielsen's?
Yeah. What's the name?
They're down there on the bottom.
Sadie
Yeah,
and
Sadie,
Benjamin, Lorraine. Yes, I remember those. Those were your landlords. Yeah.
Yeah, when I first went out to Seattle there, I caught a ride with the Buren brothers. They were going out to Anacortes to work on a plywood mill that they were building. It was a co-op deal that somebody had sold them.
Oh, yeah.
And so I caught a ride with them for, I think, $15 to Seattle. Well, they knew Ben and Sadie
Oh,
Nielsen,
yeah.
and they had leased a big apartment house and were selling or renting the rooms there for board and room.
Mhm.
So they let me stay there for $1 a day, which wasn't too bad, because Norwegian cooking.
Mhm.
And so Ben was working in the garage and apartment house similar to this. They called it the Marlboro. It was a big 10-story building,
Mhm.
and he was working in the garage in that part. So he said, well, they could use another man, they thought. So I went down and applied for the job, and so I was there about a week. I had a job. So I worked there, and that's where I got a job working for this old Gilman,
Hmm.
working there in that garage there. And
Was this their daughter?
yeah, they had a daughter, Lorraine,
Yeah.
and she was about, I think about 18, something
Yeah.
like that.
Mhm.
And she was kind of a wild one.
Wow.
Remember the,
Anyway, she was dating a guy in the Air Force. And so eventually, I guess they got married. And I had a friend there in the rooming house named, anyway, he was a radio man and worked for the government. And so
Is he listed there? Do you know? Is his name on there?
I can't hear.
is his name on here?
I don't think so.
No.
Okay.
First name is Wayne, I know that much.
Wayne Wheeler?
So anyway,
Wayne Wheeler.
one day he said, I think how would you like to go for a ride? So he had a coupe.
Ah.
And so we went down to, it was just a couple days after the Tacoma Narrows Bridge went down. So we went down to see,
Oh, wow.
see that.
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
So now, I remember you telling me about, you got the phone call about your dad.
But,
You got the phone call about your dad being sick?
oh, well, I was working there at Boeing's there, and then Lois called and said her father was very ill and he wasn't going to live. So I had to hurry up and get out of there and go back to South Dakota. So I stayed back there then and farmed for 14 years, I guess,
Yeah.
And you
something like that.
were married at that time, right?
Huh?
You were married then, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
We got married 27th of June, and then we went back to work again about 10 days afterwards. And I had been working maybe just a few days there, and I got word he was sick, so
Oh, yeah.
then we had to go back
So now, where did you get married?
to Salem, Oregon.
Okay, yeah. Do you remember what church you got married at?
First Christian.
Is that
I think
It's
it
in
was
here
a
somewhere.
congregational.
First,
Let's see here.
First-
It says it right here somewhere. First Christian Church.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yep. Friday night.
No, it wasn't that either. Is it listed on there?
It says First Christian Church.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Reverend Drill, huh?
Mhm.
So no one came. Did anyone come out for the wedding or?
mm,
No. Okay, you just stayed back there.
yeah, we were
It's
too young
interesting.
to
Oh,
hold
okay,
on
yeah.
our own.
Yeah.
They sang "I Love You Truly"
Oh,
from the Wonderful Life movie.
All right.
yeah.
That's cool.
So now, what happened when Everett came back for the second time there?
Oh, well, then he moved into Gunder's house,
Okay.
and then Grace and I lived on the farm with Mom and Aisley at that time. And in the winter, Aisley got scarlet fever from one of her clients. So Mom and Aisley were quarantined out on the farm. And Grace and I moved into town with Everett Grace and Gunder and lived there. And then we were, let's see, we lived there the rest of that winter. And then when did Mom and you switch houses? And when you move out on the farm in the spring?
When we moved to town,
Yeah, 'cause you know, Mom and
Well-
Aisley lived out there, so Aisley had the scarlet fever. And we had to move in town with you and Grace and I.
well, Aisley, didn't she come down with scarlet fever?
Yeah, she was
Yeah.
out there at the
So they
farm.
quarantined.
Yeah,
So then we had to find a place to live.
that's right, so you
So
moved
we
into town.
asked Gunder if he had, and he said, well, he said, I have to have a place to live too. And he said he didn't know how much it would cost, you know, what the
Yeah.
charges.
Yeah,
But a man named Henry Larson
yeah, I remember him.
had a house, and he lived in the house and rented it out to a young couple.
Oh, yeah.
And so he said, I think, what was that, $14 a month or $18 a
Yeah,
month?
mhm.
I think it was either $14 or $18 a month rent for the house per month.
That's
But-
that's when Grace and I moved in with you then, when Aisley was quarantined, and then after Aisley got better, then
Uh-huh.
Mother and all of us
Yeah, then
moved
she
in
moved
there.
back to, with,
We moved into
and
Gunder's
we
house.
moved on the farm.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
in the spring, yeah. That was a good move, yeah. Yeah, that was good. And I always went out in the summers and helped
Yeah,
on the farm
Oh,
with
yeah.
the kids when Grace
Okay.
ever had children.
Ah,
I remember one, I can't remember what year it was, we got hailed out.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's right.
So you were 18 years old when the grandmother died? You were 18 years old when Grandma Lydia died?
Yeah, that was the year I graduated from high school.
Ah, okay.
what do you remember about her?
Grandma,
Yeah.
oh, she was always available for a babysitter.
Oh, yeah.
She kept her pretty busy, but she was a gardener too. She worked out in the garden, and she Aisley was kind of a hard, light sleeper, and she was a baby then. Her grandmother was a babysitter for her because mother was always busy doing something else, and she ladies' aid or something. Well, yeah, she she didn't have very good health in her later years there. She had stomach trouble or something, grandmother. But,
Do you remember when Grandma Hay, our Grandma Hay said that she hoped Aisley had one just like her
yeah,
when she grew up?
Aisley was such nervous. And I know we go in there tiptoeing around in the house there, and she said, shh, she's asleep.
Yeah, don't ever wake her up.
And, well, she didn't want to wake her up because, well, she was always cross.
Yeah.
Yeah, it says here
Well,
she,
they didn't realize that what was wrong with Aisley. Her vision was so bad that she didn't know what she couldn't see anything.
Yeah,
And she'd get frightened if she something like that.
yeah,
A new person come in and scared to death, you know.
yeah.
And she was just always nervous that way. They didn't realize that her vision was so bad.
Yeah. Well, it looks like that would have been about the time your graduation was, May 5th. When she died, in May 5th, it says.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that was that spring.
1933.
yeah,
Yeah, I remember that.
wow. Yeah.
So what do you remember about Grandma Lydia?
Well, I remember when Grace and I,
Yeah, you were pretty young.
yeah, we were real small,
Yeah, I
and
guess.
she used to have us stand here by her knee, and she had these old silver knives that are round on the end, you know, those old table knives that are round on the end. And she'd get an apple, and then she'd scrape it off. That's the first applesauce. That's how the applesauce was made. But she'd scrape off some and give Grace a bite, and she'd scrape off some more and give me a bite, and do the whole apple. And between us, we ate the whole apple.
Oh,
It was good.
That's where you learned that trick.
Oh,
You're feeding bells.
oh, yeah. Yeah, back and forth, yeah. So that's what I remember.
She did a
about
lot
that.
of knitting.
Yeah,
She knitted mittens for us kids
Oh, yeah.
and mending. She was always mending, and she was making quilts. She was always busy.
yeah.
You know. But she had two sisters. I don't know whether you know about that or not.
I went down here.
Well,
And
she
six-
was a Van Note, right?
She had 6 brothers.
Yeah. Do you remember anything about the brothers?
Well, just what I heard. One of them was named Lazarus. Was one of them. He was a wrestler,
Huh.
and he'd never been defeated. I guess they
Wow.
would just wrestle for fun, mostly. But
Huh.
he had never. But he was just an average, good, strong man.
So what made you decide to leave South Dakota for Iowa again, or for Oregon, I mean? What made you decide to leave South Dakota for Oregon?
Me?
Seattle?
Yeah.
Well, it was a young lady I had met a long time ago. And
You
I
mean
went.
after he farmed there a while?
Well, yeah, you went after go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He means, when you moved back to Oregon after you and Grace had been living there and farming for 14 years, then you moved to Oregon. What made you move to Oregon? What was the deciding factor?
Oh, well,
You guys,
I've been putting in such long hours farming there, and all the stress and everything. My heart was bothering me.
Hmm.
And in this day and age, I probably would have had a bypass, but and then I'd get so tired out in the field there working, I just have to get off the tractor and lay down a while. And I told Grace, I said, I think we better get out of here. I said, we better sell out and quit and go back out. Because anyway, her folks lived here, of course, and she had her brothers. And so we moved out here. Well, Elmer, one of her brothers, said, well, I think we could use some help on the crew. So I went to work then as a laborer then for Lance Construction Company. I guess I worked for them for 25 years then. I learned the business.
So when did you buy the farm out in North Howell?
Just about the same time, just about a week after we moved here.
Oh, okay.
We were looking around for a place, and we thought maybe, well, Grace's dad was kind of helping, looking around too, so they located that one out North Howell there. So we decided we'd buy it,
Yeah.
so we did.
So what was it like when Everett and Grace decided to come out to Oregon?
oh, well, then they were looking for somebody to move on the farm.
Ah.
And they asked Ray and I first if we wanted to move down there.
Uh-huh.
But Ray didn't want to,
Okay.
because he just loved Irwin.
Ah.
And he had all his hunting and bowling and fishing buddies there that he really didn't want to leave.
Okay.
So then they went over to see about Lois and Henry,
Mm-hmm.
because they lived on a really poor farm in Lamberton, Minnesota.
Hmm.
And they had just had Arlene there.
Ah.
She was born there.
Linda, you mean? Or, they had just had her.
Yeah, Arlene was just born there. And they just didn't have anything, and he was farming this little acreage, but a very small house.
Hmm.
And it just wasn't working out.
Yeah.
He was driving a cream truck on the side all the time, working at that. So they decided it would be better if they would move over there on the
Yeah.
farm. Because they wanted to, so that was good. And so it worked out okay.
Yeah, I remember that. I was bummed because I was just used to have so much fun with their kids, and then they moved.
I know it.
And you had those little tractors that the kids.
That's right.
You had those little toy tractors the kids used to ride.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah,
I love
yeah,
those things.
yeah.
Yeah, they loved those things. Yeah, it was just fun.
Yeah.
And we just had a lot of good times all the time. All the kids were together there.
Yeah. So we need to take a break or something.
No, we got about 5 more minutes. Yeah.
All right.
So I'm wondering, so when did you, because you left South Dakota at some point, right, and moved to Iowa?
Mm-hmm,
When-
1970,
70, okay.
the year Jennifer was born that
Ah,
year.
okay.
We
Yeah.
stopped in Minnesota, I remember, to check on you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we moved down there because Ray had family down there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Dorothy Byrne and brothers and
Ah,
so forth. And he liked it down there. And he could still hunt out with Dorothy on her farm, coons and all that kind of thing.
Huh.
And he wasn't in very good health, so he worked at the hospital for, I don't know how many years, a couple years, I think.
Probably.
He first worked at Crow's Seed Corn Company in Nevada, but that was too hard for him because the winters were so bad in this elevator, you know, it's cold and he got pneumonia and he had to quit that, so then he got a job in the hospital so he could work there like in the housekeeping department.
Ah.
And Lauren also worked there and so did Carol. They were all working at the hospital.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Now, what hospital was that?
Salem Hospital.
No, Mary
Mary
Greeley.
Oh, in
Yeah,
Ames.
Mary, yeah.
Really?
One
Uh-huh.
And Lauren,
stayed off.
Lauren used to have to help him clean up the surgeries because he couldn't hack back blood.
No, that's
That's where I
right.
get it.
No, he was
Yeah,
good.
I guess that's where I get it too. I don't like the way
Yeah.
he did it.
Yeah.
And so he always made me promise that nobody would ever do an autopsy on him because that autopsy room was off limits completely to him. He couldn't even talk to the guy that did it. But they did an autopsy on him because the doctor said he needed to do that. And I said, well, it won't matter now. We'll do it. Well, it didn't.
Yeah.
So, and he needed to know how his chest was, just
Yeah.
the chest part, for the boy's sake.
Mhm.
And so we did it. And they learned that he had enlarged blood vessels going all through his chest because he always had to breathe so hard with the emphysema.
Yeah.
Everything just got enlarged. Yeah. So that was that.
All right, well, we can go ahead and take a break now, and then we'll
Oh,
start
yeah.
up. And anybody need a drink or anything?
What do you got?
Uh-huh.